friends. Welcome back to the next session on operations planning, scheduling, and control. Now, let's begin with our learning. In this particular session, we'll be understanding and dealing with the concepts of factoring operations learning, the learning objectives. At the end of this particular session, the learners will be able to understand what do we mean by factoring the operations learning, what are the various roles of operations that have been undertaken in terms of factoring the operations learning, and describe how factoring the operations learning can be undertaken. Now let's begin with our learning. Firstly, we'll understand what do we mean by factoring the operations learning. The administration of business activities to achieve the best level of efficiency feasible inside an organization is known as the operations management. So operations management is an activity wherein we try to achieve the best level of efficiency by managing the internal operations of a business activity or an organization. And when those activities are being managed in a very effective way, we can call it as the operations management scenario is being undertaken. So the concept of factoring the operations learning, it has been concerned with the effectively transforming the materials and labors into goods and services in order to maximize an organization's profit. So the various measures or the steps that have been undertaken for transforming the materials with the uses of a certain labor into the qualitative goods and services for the better delivery to the customers and finished goods production is called as the factoring the operations learning. So the concept of factoring is dealing with what operational activities have been undertaken and what do we learn from creating of a raw material to a finished goods and how those activities can be conducted in the business organization for the achievement of the organization's profit. So the two motives as to the profit maximization and wealth maximization can be achieved by the organization that is a business and how to achieve those targets or the aims in the short run as well as in the long run with the support of various activities. Now let's understand what are the various procedures or activities that have been performed in factoring the invoicing. So in case of an invoice factoring and invoice financing, the various steps that can be undertaken for the purchase of receivables by a factoring company and the loan provided by a financial company where receivables are used as collateral. Number one, in case of an adding the debts to your company, it's a concept of invoice financing, which focuses on loan provided by a financial company where receivables are used as collaterals. The second perspective, as wherein the collateral is been required, again is a part of an invoicing financing. Your personal and company's credit history or the score matter, again it isn't part of an invoicing financing, wherein the loan provided by the financial company where receivables are used as collateral, it is a financial terminology and hence the various calculation numericals are impacting your profitability of business in a certain consideration. And hence, adding the debts requiring of collateral and personal or company's credit are the concepts of invoicing financing. The third for the next fourth perspective is the credit worthiness of your company's customers matter is the concept of invoice factoring, wherein the purchase of receivables by a factoring company can be understood and it identify as to the credit worthiness of a particular firm. So based on the credit worthiness, the factoring or the purchasing of receivables will be undertaken and the factoring company decisions are being undertaken on those levels. Now let's understand what are the various four major factors in the concept of operations learning. The four major factors in the concept of operations learning are financing, the customers, the internal process, and the learning innovations. Financing as to what amount of finances are made available, what is the use and requirement of finances, how the finances can be made available, and how the finances can be employed for creating or for conducting a better operational activities or a better learning can be undertaken. The second perspective focuses on the customers, wherein what type of product delivery we are offering to the customers, how those product delivery to the customers can be undertaken, and the better quality their services can be delivered to the customers in the long run, and they get very happy and satisfied with the goods and services that have been delivered or that have been provided to them. The third perspective focuses on the internal processes. So what type of process and activities that have been undertaken in the business organization and how do we control the internal process and activities in the short run as well as in the long run. So that is the perspectives of internal processes that have been undertaken in order to control the business activities and the processes. And lastly, the fourth perspective as to the learning innovations. So how do we implement or how do we conduct the various learning innovations activities, and in a particular consideration of management scenario, how the various learning innovations have been implemented for a better product quality and improvement, and in what way the innovations tools, strategies, and techniques are being employed or they are being used. Now let's understand what is the 4V framework that is being adopted for the factoring of learnings in the business organization. The 4V framework is the amount. The first one is the volume, that is the quantity that is manufactured. The variety, that is the various types of product that are being manufactured for the control. The variation, that is the changes that can be undertaken in the business organization or the manufacturing unit. And lastly, the visibility, that is what is visible and what is actually available as a part of finished goods. And unless and until the finished goods are available, we cannot ultimately deliver it. So that are the 4V framework, that is the volume, variety, variations, and visibility. Now let's understand or have a focus on the fundamental principles of factoring or cycling learning. The first principle is the concept of reality. The second principle is humility. The third principle is the organization itself. The fourth principle is the accountability. The fifth principle is the change management. The sixth principle is the quality control. The seventh principle is the success. And the eighth principle is knowing your competition. So these are the various fundamental principles on which basis one can identify as to how we can implement the process of factoring the operations learning, and all the operational activities can be implemented in a better way for the better productivity and better output considerations. So now let's conclude what we have learned in this particular session. In this particular session, we have understood what do we mean by factoring the operations learning and how the technology has transformed the way the business activities are being operated. The introduction of technology in the operations management has always and continuously boosted the organization's productivity. And hence, the operational activity, manufacturing and production activity has been there at a continuous level, and in the business organization, the introduction of such activities are being creating in a certain situation as to how the level of activity, level of production, and qualitative productions are being increased over a period of time. Over the time, the scope of technology in operations management has expanded beyond the product creation to the design, management, and improvement of the operational systems and processes. And from those considerations, the improvement of activities is being undertaken from the overall scenario, and the systems and processes are also being undertaken in a very better and effective way. So that is the concept of improvement of the operational systems and processes as to how we can improve those activities, and they can be provided in a better consideration in the short run as well as in the long run. Now let's summarize what we have learned in this particular session. In this particular session, we have understood what do we mean by the concept of factoring and operations learning, what planning has been required in case of factoring and operations learning, and lastly, how do we implement the factoring the operations learning in the business organization. I hope you must have enjoyed the learning in this particular session. We'll stay connected and we'll continue with our learning. Thank you so much for your patience listening. Thank you.